Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at how we can add styling to our pages. If you look on your screen, you'll see the same program that I already wrote once, but this time it has some nice features. It's got a yellow background, that's kind of cool, and the text is centered. Well, this leads us to a really important aspect of web development. As you remember, HTML itself really tells you what things mean, but it doesn't tell you exactly where they go. So we have another language, another technology that we use to add those kind of styling hints to our pages. And so we'll take a look here and see how that technology works. Of course, use Control-U, Command-U to view the source, and you can see what's going on. When you look at my source page here, you can see that I have built a page exactly like the last one. In fact, it is the last one. If you look from line 21 on to line 39, it looks exactly like we saw last time. It's got the tags and so on. But the interesting part happens when you look up in the header area. If you look at the area between lines 6 and 19, you'll see that I've added a new interesting tag, style/style. And what the style does is it says, hey, I'm going to define a style here. I'm going to explain what I mean when I tell you, hey, make the body, make a headline level 1, make a paragraph. So that's what styles are, is you're explaining, okay, what does it mean when I'm going to do this? And this really makes sense. You know, I've written some books, and I write for different kinds of publishers, and a lot of times I'll say, hey, make a headline level 1. Well, one publisher will make that a certain font, they'll make it centered, whatever. Another publisher may make it purple. They'll use a totally different font. When I'm writing the book, I don't care. I just say, hey, make that a level 1 headline. However you're going to do it, you know, you've got design people who understand all that way better than me. Let them do it. That's exactly how we think in cascading style sheets. We let the HTML talk about what the page means, and then we switch to this other little language to describe how things should look. You follow me? Okay, well, let's take a careful look at what we have here. The style usually has a type of text CSS. Okay, that makes sense because it's text and it's CSS. CSS, what's CSS? Well, it stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Yeah, that's not very helpful. But don't worry, as you see how it works here, we'll be able to understand it. Let's not worry about the whole cascading business, but the style sheet is important. What that means is, hey, when I see a style, this is how it's going to be displayed. Now, if you look at the general structure of it, you'll see that we have a number of elements. And these should look familiar to you. Body, P, H1, and A. Have you seen those before? Of course you are. And those are the parts of the web page. Some of them. I didn't use all of them, but the ones that I cared about, I said, all right, body, this is what you're going to look like. Paragraph, this is what you're going to look like. H1, this is what you're going to look like, and so on. That's kind of cool, isn't it? It turns out we can define a style for any HTML element. And the neat thing is, if we define for a paragraph, for example, every paragraph will automatically have this behavior. That's really cool. I wonder if there's other ways I can define individual elements or a series of elements. Well, sure there are. But for now, we'll just go with this basic form. This is great for what we need. So I've defined new styles for the body, paragraph, H1, and anchor. Now, inside each of these elements, you'll see that I can have a list of rules. We'll look at the body tag first. The way that these style rules work is that they have two parts. They have a rule and a value. So inside the body, I've got a rule called background color. Well, how do I know all these rules? Well, there's really not that many of them. It won't take long to learn. But if you're using one of the tools that I recommend, like Komodo Edit or something that's got a little bit of syntax suggestion, you can guess and get pretty close. It'll help you out. We're typically only going to use a very small number of style rules in this course. It won't take long for you to learn them. One of them is called background-color. I wonder what it does. Oh, you're way ahead of me. It changes the background color. You do need the dash, not a space. It's a single word that's got a hyphen. You do also need to be very careful about the colon and the semicolon. The colon separates the rule from its value, and the semicolon indicates the end of the line. I know that's a little funky, but you know, in English we use punctuation, right? We use commas to separate things, we use periods to indicate the end of a sentence. In programming environments we do exactly the same thing, although sometimes we reuse punctuation symbols in a new way. So in CSS, a colon is always used to separate the rule name from its value. And the semicolon indicates, hey, it's the end of a rule value pair. Okay, so the body's background color should be yellow. And if you look back at the original page, I'm looking back at the original page, hello. Look at that, the body's background color is yellow. Now any rules I set to the body will automatically be available for the entire page. That's part of that cascading thing. Oh, kind of cool. Yes, it is kind of cool. Well, let's take a look. Now the text is centered in the header and in the paragraph. Let's take a look at how that's done. Well, son of a gun, paragraph, text align, center. What do you suppose that means? Oh, you're way ahead of me. That means align any text in a paragraph so it's centered. I wonder if there's a text align left and a text align right. Of course there are. Yeah, that's really cool. Now, in this case, I only put one rule per element. Could I add multiple rules? Oh, sure, you can have as many as you want. And as we get to really intense web development, which this course is not really about, you can often see an element that has 20, 30 different rules assigned. You know, how do I want it to be lined up on the page? What do I want it to do if the page size changes and it goes to a mobile device and so on? We're not going to worry about that too much here because we just needed enough CSS that we can get to making gains. But you can see the basic idea of CSS is very, very powerful. And that's exactly what we do here. Now, you take a look at the last one, anchor. By setting the anchor color to black, what I've done is I've said, hey, I don't care if they click on it, if it's been visited, we're just going to always make it black. And I like that. There's other things we can do. Oh, there's so much more we can do with CSS. But the basic idea is this. That's very simple, isn't it? If you keep track of these things, these are things that you'll probably want to do as you start to build your own game. Well, I want to show you another variation of this. Now this page looks identical to the one we just saw, at least from the user's point of view. But when we look at the source code, you'll see that it's slightly different. Now my switching is going kind of crazy. Okay, show me the source. Try it again. There we go. So when we look at the source code of this, you'll see the HTML code looks like what we've already seen. There's no surprises there. But there's clearly a style. No question there's a style there, because the background is yellow and the text is centered. But where's the style? Ho, 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 we've got something special going on here. Now, a lot of times, especially in a gaming environment, and especially when we're doing the project we're going to do next, where we're going to have several pages that should all have the same style, there's a dirty little trick you can do. See, we can outsource. We can define a file one time and then have lots of different pages go to it. Because in an adventure game, likely you're going to choose one background color to rule them all, at least as a starting place, and then maybe you'll deviate. Or you'll have a few overall rules. You'll assign one font you want to use for everything, or whatever. And so anything that should be shared between all the files, we can use this external CSS. Let's take a look at what happens. First of all, on line 6 you see we have a thing called a link tag. Well, a link means I'm going to link in some sort of an external file. It's mainly used to pull in CSS. There's a few other variations, but for the most part it's used just to pull in a CSS file. The link has 3 attributes. Rel means relationship, and we'll pretty much always use style sheet. Type is text CSS. Oh, we used that before. And href, that's, hey, where do I find this? And what we're telling it is, you should be able to find a file called gugu.css in the same directory. Yes, you're right, that's a relative reference. So let's click on this. In my source code tool, I can click on it and see actually the CSS file. This is a separate file. And look at that, that's very familiar. Yeah, it's all exactly the same CSS we had before, but this time it's living in its own file. And that's exciting, because it means I can reuse this code across my entire game, or app, or whatever it is I'm doing, and then all of the pages will share the same file. Of course, I can still add specialization. I can add the regular kind of CSS if I ever want to overwrite this. But this gives me a tremendous amount of power. We're getting very close to being able to build our own adventure game with web pages. You pretty excited? Well, stay with me. We'll do more soon.